Okay, so my name is Kaylee Brown, and this is Michele Romeo. It is Friday, February 22nd at 2:30 p.m. in the Ruth Patrick Science Center. So, Michele, when and where were you born?
I was born May 1986 in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, precisely on Eglin Air Force Base, actually.
That's interesting. Where did you grow up?
Well, I spent about 12 years there in the Panhandle of Florida, and then moved to Mississippi and spent the rest of my time growing up in Vicksburg, Mississippi.
What was it like to move from Florida to Mississippi?
It was kind of the same. You're in the South, as long as you're in the Southeast, you're in the Southeast. The hunting's big, the redneck thing's big. The education, I was behind. Florida was actually behind Mississippi. That's crazy, right? About 6 months in the schoolwork. So when I got there, I didn't know what was going on for the first little bit, but not bad. I was, 12, 13.
So, would you say Mississippi was your favorite place to live, or
Favorite
Florida?
place? No. Neither one of those was my favorite place to live. As a kid, I liked both equally.
Mm-hmm.
We had a farm in Florida, though, so I probably had more fun there. Overall, my favorite place to live was Tennessee. I absolutely loved Tennessee.
I like Tennessee too.
Yeah.
Can you describe your family?
I have a mother and a younger brother. My father passed away in 1990 when I was 4. My grandparents on my mother's side were very, very old, so they passed away when I was 10 to 12. And my father's parents are still alive. They live in Florida. My grandpa on my dad's side was Navy. My dad was Air Force. My little brother is Army. My mom was a teacher.
What kind of activities were you involved in when you were in high school in Vicksburg?
Oh, so in high school, not many school activities. I rode and competed in horseback riding, specifically eventing, which is dressage jumping and cross country. I did a little bit of cross country running. Yeah, that's about it. That takes up a lot of time and a lot of money, the horse thing.
It must have been interesting, though.
It was fun. I loved it. I miss it. I want a horse again.
Maybe you can have one sometime in the future.
Once I own a place, yeah.
Where did you go to college?
My first college, I went to USM, University of Southern Mississippi. I went straight out of high school there. And I was there for 5 years in total. A year in the middle there, I left and went to Jones County Junior College to try to pull my GPA back up because the first year did not go well. Did well, pulled my GPA up, went back to USM, and they were like, oh, hey, this doesn't count towards your cumulative GPA for this school. So they started me right back at my 1.3. So, yeah, didn't help me, but those credits transferred, so it still counted for that. But the GPA didn't help.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to major in communications when you were going there?
I like to talk. No, it was a little more complicated than that, but I like to write. I like to talk. I like to do research. Back when I was in school, that was 2004. I graduated high school, to put that in perspective. 2004, I started college. I actually started college with a major for veterinary science. And I took organic chemistry and changed my major. And then I was like, well, what would be fun? What would be fun for me? I like to read, write, talk, communicate, all that kind of stuff. So I decided that journalism would be fun, yes, and then I looked at how much that they make and said, okay, what's kind of like that pays more? And so I ended up with mass communications with an emphasis in media production as my bachelor's.
That's interesting. Kind of like flip-flopping everywhere.
Yeah, I did that my whole life, actually. I've lived probably 4 completely separate lives because drastic changes.
Mm-hmm.
But
So, how old were you when you enlisted into the Army?
I was 29 when I enlisted.
Okay. What was it like to join at 29 years old?
Oh my gosh. So, basic training was, imagine that you're an adult and you have to go sit in a 6th grade classroom for 3 months and live with these little high school kids, which, by the way, it's a bay where we lived. A bay, which is one large open room with bunk beds, and 60 other females, averaging 18 years old, and 6 showers and 8 toilets in one large open bathroom. Is kind of a culture shock. Like, I wouldn't mind living with a lot of people or living in those conditions wasn't the problem. And the training wasn't the problem for me, it was for a lot of the younger kids because they just came out of being with their parents. My problem was having patience and not killing an 18-year-old child because they're ridiculous. And they didn't sleep. We don't get a lot of sleep anyways.
Mm-hmm.
You try to go to sleep and you hear, like, all you hear is people gossiping and fighting and whatever all night long while you're having to pull guard shifts throughout the night already. So you're trying to sleep. If you can't sleep. You don't have earplugs and stuff there because they regulate everything. It's almost like a prison too, actually. It is. It's, you live there, you work there, you do what they say, you eat when they say, you eat what they say. So, I mean, it's kind of like a prison too. But the worst part for me was just the other, like, living with the other females, the young kids, the way that they think and the way that they act. I was like, I know I must have been like that at some point in time, but oh my God.
That's a new perspective on what you were like when you were younger.
Yes, I must have been awful.
So why did you decide to enlist in the Army instead of the other branches?
Ooh, that's a good one. I was looking at the other ones. I originally wanted to join the Air Force because my dad was Air Force and they also have nicer living conditions and a few other perks that they're a little bit, I wouldn't say better, but they have more perks.
Mm-hmm.
They don't allow tattoos. The rule when I was trying to join for the Air Force was you cannot have any tattoos on your arms below your t-shirt line, on your legs below a shorts line, or above the t-shirt line here. So I have wrist tattoos, I have ankle tattoos, I have feet tattoos. I had one. I actually had a tattoo removed to join the Army because I had one behind my ear, which is not legal for any of them. Like, you can't join any of the services with a neck tattoo. So I actually had that removed. It was more painful than having it put there. And I not only did the laser removal thing, but it didn't actually work fast enough. So I went to a plastic surgeon and they cut it out with a razor blade or a scalpel.
Oh my God.
And stitched it back together. And because I was about to join the military and you're not allowed to have surgical procedures, I had to do it awake with like no oral medicine, none of that stuff. They just gave me a numbing shot and went at it.
That sounds awful. So basically, you couldn't go into the Air Force because you had tattoos.
Mm-hmm. Because of where they were and how many
And
there
then
were.
you have to remove one in order to be in the military.
Yes. Yes. And depending on what the time is that you're joining, like if it's time of war, right after 9/11, they didn't care about tattoos and let a bunch of people join That's why you do see people in the Army with neck and hand tattoos and stuff. If that's the time that they joined, if they need more people and you're going to war, they don't care about your tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a peaceful time, they get more strict. And then the Navy, I just did not want to be stationed on a boat. I get seasick. I just didn't want to be on a boat. And they said that, you have a 90% chance of at least one of your years, even if you only do 4 years, one of your years in the Navy, you're going to be stationed on a submarine or a boat. And I was like, yeah, okay, nope. And so then that left the Army because Coast Guard is also a lot of water stuff and boats. And so that wasn't it. And then I wanted to be full-time, so active duty. And that left the Army. And my little brother's Army, and he swore by it. He's really hoo-ah. That's what we call it. He's really hoo-ah. But yeah.
That's interesting. How did your family and friends react to you enlisting? It probably wasn't too bad.
They loved it. My mom wasn't even, I joined the combat MOS, so you would figure. But my brother is the combat MOS, and he joined first. So my mom was already over the shock of that. So she was like, oh, okay, be safe, do well. Good job, I'm proud of you. They were happy because I was paying off my debt, which is my school loans. I had $20,000 of school loans that I didn't pay, couldn't pay back. So I was getting myself straight, and everybody was really proud about that.
That's good. So back to basic training. How was it in Oklahoma?
I think I'm allergic to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's the only place I've ever lived where I had allergies. Ever. And it was the winter time, the winter into the spring. Oklahoma's awful. It's windy, it's cold, and there's pollen when it's windy and cold.
That doesn't even sound right.
It doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand. And then I didn't really get to leave base, so as far as the actual area, the people there and all that, I don't know anything about that because they don't let you leave the base when you're in training. But the weather was god-awful.
So what was your drill instructor like?
Ooh. We had 3. So they split you up into platoons. And each platoon gets 3 drill sergeants. 1 female and 2 male drill sergeants. And because they were low on female drill sergeants, they let E5s that were females that were doing well become drill sergeants. So I had an E5 drill sergeant. So if you're a lower rank than all the rest of the drill sergeants, you feel you have something to prove. So the E5 female drill sergeants were by far the worst ones because it's like a Chihuahua type thing. Chihuahuas are mean just because they're small and they have the disadvantage of size. This lady was tiny, and she was an E5, and she was mean.
What?
I was the same age or older than my drill sergeants. So a couple of them were about the same age as me, and even more were probably a few years younger. So, I knew how it went. My brother told me how it goes, and it's the same thing as getting a new job. You might have a boss that's younger than you, but they've been there longer. They know more about that. So you can't be like, oh, well, I'm older than you, so I know more, so whatever. So I just kind of sailed through under didn't make a big deal. But some of the stuff that other people wouldn't catch on to, I guess, made me laugh because of how, I could see things, I guess. And so I would laugh randomly and get in trouble for it. And sometimes, so I would just get down in the front leaning rest, which is your push-up position. I would just go ahead and get down when I started to laugh. I would just go, and they're like, what's so funny? I'm like, nothing, drill sergeant. Nothing at all. So I got really strong. And it was only a few years ago. It was the beginning of 2016. It was only a few years ago. But apparently now, they can't smoke people like even like they did when I was there. Like, yes, they can make you do push-ups or whatever, but only like a certain set, and they have this cut off and blah blah blah. We stayed in the forward leaning rest, just sitting there, just in that position for like a good 30-45 minutes one day. The whole group, all of us. But so I got really strong really fast. I lost not weight, because I gained a lot of muscle. I didn't lose weight, but I lost inches and gained a lot of muscle, and so that was good. They always had this saying. So they had this saying in the big army and in training. You're either going to be smart or you're going to be strong. You're going to be one or the other, because if you're not smart, you're going to be pushing a lot.
Well, I mean, I guess that's one good thing about being in there, just constant push-ups.
Oh yeah,
make
you get
yourself
paid to
stronger.
work out. That's why they say another saying is PT is free.
Oh
The
my
PT is
gosh.
free. You get paid to work out. It's not bad.
So, did the training change you? And how so?
Changed how I look at things and people.
Mhm.
I did a lot of living as a civilian before I joined. So I'd been around all the different cultures and the different, which is a big thing for some of the people that are just out of high school though. There's people everywhere. We had people that actually had just come over from Puerto Rico, and they have a program where if you join the Army from another country, you can become a citizen.
Mhm.
We had a lot of those people, and from different places, and they had to go to the language school first. And so, I mean, I know Spanish. I know a little bit of Spanish now too, but I don't know. It just opens how you
Mhm.
see things.
Where did you go after basic training?
AIT, still Fort Sill. They put us on a bus, the people that were artillery. They put us all on a bus and drove us like a half a mile down the road and unloaded us at a new barracks building. And they're like, all right, have fun. And then people came out to get us. And because it's artillery, we still had drill sergeants for AIT. We had instructors, but we also still had drill sergeants because it's technically something they call OSIT, which is, I forgot what it stands for, One Service Unit Training or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably wrong. There are vets watching this like, what the fuck? I'm sorry. Yep, but it was pretty much the same thing. Except for that our rooms were no longer one big bay. Now we had rooms with 3 little beds and 3 people, and we had our own bathroom for each 3 people. So that was a lot better. Got a lot more sleep, yes. Got a lot more sleep. It was great.
So, you said that you were in the 2nd Battalion, 82nd Field Artillery Regiment, yes?
Yes, at Fort Hood. 282 FA, Fort Hood. So when I got out of AIT, they were still in a trial phase. Female artillery could only go to 2 places when I graduated. There was 2 places you could go, and that's it, because they haven't incorporated females into all of the combat things yet. And we were on a trial phase. Like, they were actually reporting how things happened, if there were more sexual assaults happening, like how it turned out before they started opening other places for it. So I could go to Fort Carson or Fort Hood. And they had told us this huge lie at basic training. They were like, if you make Distinguished Honor Grad, then we have this wish list, right, of places you want to go. If you make Distinguished Honor Grad, then they're more likely to honor your wish list. You know, they might send you to the place you prefer. Fort Carson was on my wish list. I didn't know, nobody knew until we actually were going somewhere that there was only 2 places we could go. That wasn't told to us. But Fort Carson was on my wish list. And I was Distinguished Honor Grad. And they said, ha ha ha, you're going to Fort Hood. And so there I was. Yep. And it wasn't a lot of the younger people, or a lot of people in general, thought it was a huge, huge deal that we were there.
Mm-hmm.
The females being there. And the people that we came into the unit, the people that were already there, did not think it was a big deal. Apparently, though, I talked to a bunch of them after we got to know them. They had this huge thing of training that they had to go to. Their sensitivity integration training thing that they had to do before we got there. Which they thought was bull also, and like we all just kind of fit in. So there wasn't any big problems, at least in my platoon. I heard about some other things, and then deployment was a whole different thing. But it wasn't a real big deal. We did have those people, there were those sergeants that were like, the females shouldn't be here because they can't lift and sling their rounds. Which, I mean, they tested out to be able to do that. But the AIT was being really lax with it and letting people pass that were not passing the test. Which we later had a meeting with the Force Comm Sergeant Major, and that was told to him. So they might have increased the testing now, hopefully. But so some people were slower than the guys and whatever. But it's not a male-female thing. It's a specific person thing. There were guys out there, there were tiny guys out there that I wasn't slinging rounds. I was, computer.
Yeah.
But I could probably sling more rounds than some of the guys that were out there. Like, there were some tiny guys out there. So it's not a guy-girl thing.
Yeah.
But they want to make everything a guy-girl thing. But
That sort of makes a disadvantage, I feel, between the genders.
mm-hmm. Yeah, there was. And then a lot of the females felt like they had to do more just to prove that we can be there type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we were actually doing more work.
Just to prove yourselves to the men.
To be proved, to prove that we can do the job. We were doing the job more.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh yeah, let's see if she can do it. Let's see if she can do it. Let's sit here and smoke my vape while we see if she can do it.
They were vaping over there too.
Oh gosh. That's the new generation thing. I don't know. It causes popcorn lung, by the way. There's a study on it. Look it up.
Awful. So where were you stationed and what kind of activities were you involved in your unit?
So the units don't really have activities like schools do.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really a thing. There's not extracurricular anything for the unit. There is something for the families for the unit that's called FRG, Family Readiness Group, which I don't have a family, I don't have a husband and a kid, so I wasn't really part of the FRG. Sometimes we got days off work for going to the FRG meetings or get late calls for going to FRG meetings, in which case me and my other single friends would go to the FRG meetings. But that's about as far as extracurricular stuff for the Army goes. There's not... The Army itself, as the big Army, has sports teams and stuff. But that's not unit things.
Yeah.
So there was somebody that was on the basketball team.
Okay. What did your unit do in Fort Hood?
So while we were at Fort Hood, we trained and cleaned and did landscaping and sweeping and cleaning. And then we go to the field. And they switched commands right when I left. They were going to the field a lot. But because we are field artillery unit, we do field artillery things. And when we're not doing field artillery things, we're doing janitorial things. So in the field, Fort Hood is a heavy base is what we call it. It's heavy. So heavy artillery are track vehicles, paladins. A paladin is essentially a tank with a huge gun on it. And I mean huge gun as in we shot 155 was the round that we shot. A 155 round. It was 155 or 105 round. A 100-pound round. So tanks rounds are like this big. Mm-hmm. Our rounds are like this big. And then my vehicle for the FDC, I was Fire Direction Center for the Paladins. We had another little up-armored track vehicle without any guns on it, with like computer setups inside. Mm-hmm. And so basically we're essentially large up-armored track vehicles. And then you still have the Humvees for some people and LMTVs and all of that, but LMTV is a light medium weight truck, something. I've not even been out that long. I don't know why I can't remember acronyms. School, that's why. But yeah, so when we go to the field, we just run. Sometimes we run dry missions, which means we act like we're going to shoot and then we don't shoot. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we ran actual missions and would fire real rounds all night and keep up the whole town. I liked being in the field. I liked doing my actual job, and I loved like doing my job on deployment. But the fact that you usually don't do your job when you're in a combat job, you usually do stupid other little things. And the times that you do get to do your job, you're away from your family and friends, like living in the field. So you spend, say, most of the field rotations were 10 days out. You come back for like 5 days, go another 10 days out, come back. And so, especially for people with kids, it sucks. So, I mean, then you're like, would I rather sweep, mop, and buff this floor, every day, and then go cut grass, and then go pull weeds out of here, and then go do this, and then get to go back to my family? Or would I rather go do my actual job that I enjoy doing and not get to see anybody? So, it kind of sucks.
So, what was it like to be in your unit? Like, how many girls? I know that you said there was like a lot, but how many were there when you were stationed?
In my unit, like in 282, we had mechanics in 282 as well. So, because you have to have support. Mm-hmm. Everybody that's combat has to have support. So, without them, just the artillery females, we only had about 27. And that's out of 3 firing batteries at average 100 people per firing battery. So it was still only about 11% females.
So a small amount, even though there was supposed to be a lot coming in.
Well, I don't know what a lot coming in means. I know that we did have a meeting on Fort Hood, that meeting I was talking about with the Force Comm Sergeant Major. He brought every single female combat MOS person into one conference room to have his meeting. And this was the ones just on Fort Hood. And I want to say there was like 120 females in every combat MOS on the entire Fort Hood, which is the largest post in the U.S. So that times that divided by how many people are actually in the Army on Fort Hood is tiny amount.
So What was it like when you were stationed in Iraq and Kuwait?
So deployment was its own thing, which I wanted to deploy. Everybody wants to deploy. Well, not everybody, but most people want to deploy, and not everybody gets to. And so they were talking about this deployment, and nobody was sure if it was going to happen. This happened right when I first got there, right? I first got there, and they're like, all right, in a month or two, we're going to go to NTC, which is the National Training Center, and then we're going to deploy. And everybody that had been there for a while, they're like, they told us that they were going to deploy like 2 years ago, and we never did. We're not going to deploy. And so we went to NTC, and then we came back, and then they're like, hey, so yeah, you're really deploying in February. So we went to NTC in October and did our little strategic thing, and we deployed in February, that following February. And we went to Kuwait, and then they were rotating people up to Iraq. So in groups, because artillery is technically support. In a combat situation, artillery units aren't by themselves out there fighting because we're long distance. So artillery can't be by themselves out there fighting, like just the artillery unit go out there and do stuff. We're support. And so they attached us to a completely separate unit, like not even from Fort Hood, attached us to them in platoon sizes, each one to each of these other little units, and sent us out to all different places. And Kuwait was really, really, really hot. I'm talking about, thank goodness, I was in Iraq when Kuwait actually got this hot, but it got 135 degrees for multiple days in a row. It was in the upper 120s when I left Kuwait and went to Iraq, and Iraq is not as hot, but it was still over 115 in Iraq. Yeah, and sand, just sand. Kuwait is literally just sand. Like there was nothing there. You look out and it's sand, and it looks like those movies, like The Mummy, when you just look and there's so much sand that it looks like it's reflecting things off of it, and you just start having visions of stuff that might be there and it's not, because it's just sand.
That must have been interesting. What year were you deployed?
2017. Yep. So that was not very long ago. Yep.
Which did you prefer? Did you prefer being in Iraq or Kuwait?
Hands down, Iraq. So Iraq was the actual combat part of the deployment. It was the actual deployment, and people don't consider Kuwait a deployment, and I agree. Having been there, Kuwait is like being in garrison, which is back at Fort Hood, but on steroids, and you live there, and it's hot. So, I mean, you're doing the same type of stuff that you would be doing back home, except for a lot of loading and unloading connexes, which are like the back of an 18-wheeler, like those metal things. So a lot of unload all the stuff off of it, take inventory of all the stuff, find a different way to load it back in there, where you think that, you know, maybe next time you have to do the inventory, you don't have to take everything out. So you put it all in that different way. All right, that took like 2 days, because there's tons of connexes. And then you go clean stuff, you test your vehicle, you test your radio equipment, you test all the stuff, and then you go back to the connex, and you got to take inventory again, because why not? And it's not good enough that you rearranged all of this stuff, because the officer wants to see all of it in piles on the sand. So you take everything back out of the connex and you count it again. And this is outside in the sun. It's 130 degrees-ish. You're doing this all day. Unless you're on night crew. Night crew was with the mechanics. We work overnight, and sometimes, I think when it got like 1:30 something, they actually switched everybody to nights. I think they did. I wasn't there for that part. I know when it was 1:15, I was out there during the day. But you could be with the mechanics, which means that if your vehicle is being fixed, you help the mechanic fix your vehicle. So that was one of the duties, or you could be doing that. I would rather be fixing the vehicles. I always volunteered for that. If they needed somebody, my vehicle was in there, I'm like, going to the bay. Would much rather be doing that. But that's all it was like in Kuwait. And then, counting people, taking classes. I did do the CLS class, Combat Lifesaver, in Kuwait, which was awesome. I loved it. It's like a EMS class on steroids, basically, with a fake war going on. So they'd set up this tent to be like, it reminded me of, I don't know, like the Korean War or something in there. They had all the lights turned like way, way down, like it was nighttime. And you had these dummies, like these dummies that bleed and stuff on the floors. And then they let you all in and you go find a dummy and save the dummy. And there's like all these sound effects going off and flashing lights, like how it would be bullets and like all this stuff. And you're saving your dummy, who by the way is bleeding out all over everything. And you're like saving your dummy. That was so much fun. It was so much fun. But I have like a pink stained uniform. But so we got to do sometimes, classes like that. But for the most part, not really.
So that was the most fun part of
Kuwait, yeah. Iraq, we got to shoot in combat. That was my favorite part. My very favorite moment in Iraq was when we had a rocket hit like 40 meters from where we were. Like shook the ground, everything. Come really close. Our radar people did whatever they do with their equipment right when it hit. Tracked a signal like straight to their pinpoint location, sent it to us on our little computers. We put that in, square the location, make sure that the guns variables and stuff are right, send it to the guns, boom, all within 2 minutes from when that hit, we had fired a round and blew up their rocket. That was my favorite part. Got a combat action badge for that, actually. We all did.
What was it like receiving that?
It was pretty cool. My brother said it was bullshit because he got deployed during the original Iraq War. So he was in combat like real like close, and he was super upset that artillery like firing counted for that award. He was super upset. He was like, you didn't even see the person in person. He was like, you fired from way over there and they fired from way over there. He's like, I don't understand how that counts. He's like, I didn't get one. Okay, I'll give you mine. Do you want it?
That's his reasoning why he's mad, because he didn't get one.
He was supposed to get one, but because he was in like close combat and I was in artillery is distance combat. Mm-hmm. He thought that it shouldn't count. A lot of the infantry and cavalry think that way because they get closer physically. Like we could still get blown up. They still aim at us.
Yeah.
They triangulate the artillery too. They still aim at us. It's just not, a person running across with an AK. It's a rocket or a mortar.
Which is scarier, I would think, because it's bigger.
I don't know. If you get hit by a rocket or a mortar, you're not going to know it. You're going to be dead. If you get hit by a bullet, you're probably going to still be alive and you're going to feel it. I'd probably rather get hit by a rocket, honestly. I wouldn't know. I'd disintegrate.
I guess looking at it from that point, it's better.
Yeah.
How did you learn to use the computers? Did you have to go through training for that?
AIT. That's what AIT is.
The AIT.
So AIT is specific job training for what your MOS is. So the whole time in AIT, all we did was the computer training, which that's an AFATIDS, Automated Field Artillery Tactical Data System. I do remember that acronym. That's all we did in AIT pretty much, which we had to learn a lot of stuff. There's a lot more we do because only one person in 2 people on deployment, but usually only one person works the box. The AFATIDS, we call the box. Out of my whole group, we have like 7 people. 7 people per platoon that are FDC. And we have the chief, which is the senior ranking NCO, is the chief. Then we have the fire direction officer, which is obviously an officer. And then we have the RTO, which is the radio guy. Then we have the driver, and we have the AFATIDS operators, 1 and 2. So your chances are 2 out of 7 that you're going to even be working the box. So the AIT was kind of off there. And we all still did manual gunnery, which they don't teach anymore. And we did use, even as a heavy unit, light units use it more than heavy units. We did use on deployment because we had to calibrate the guns. We had to, all of that stuff because, well, for one, the gunners don't know that kind of stuff. They do pull string, go bang. They do the heavy lifting. They remember the charges and that kind of stuff. That's what they do. We calibrate the guns. We do the variable testing. We do like all of this stuff, by the way, is physics on a paper. Which I didn't even know that when we were learning it, and they made me feel better when I was getting out, and my chief's like, physics? He was like, we do physics all the time.
Makes you feel smart.
Yeah. Sometimes. You're under pressure. Like, you can't get that wrong. If you calibrate the gun wrong while you're firing at the enemy and you miss and then they hit us, like, you can't get that wrong. So that's why they had all of us do the same calculation. We all do it. If the majority gets this number, that's the number.
Just to make sure that it was completely correct.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You don't let one person do it. He's like, all right, everybody stop. We're doing MVVs. Here's your paper. This is what the temperature and angle is right now. Figure it out. Everybody looks at each other. We're like, all right, so 4 of us got this answer, so that must be it. And then we call it down to the guns. We're like, hey, do this. So,
what was combat like? I know that you've talked about it already, but was it stressful at all, or was it just thrilling to you?
I enjoyed it more than it stressed me out. And I wasn't actually, like, you think when you're on the plane flying out there that you're going to be scared of getting shot or getting blown up or whatever, that you're going to be scared and, you know, fight or flight type thing. I honestly wasn't scared of dying out. Not once out there. It didn't even come into my mind. Like, I didn't even think about it. That wasn't one of the things that I was thinking about. I was thinking every day is like Groundhog's Day. Literally every day we do the same thing. We had the same schedules. And it was 12-hour days. And the 12 hours that you're not working, you have to figure out how to do hygiene. Try to make yourself sleep. I did have problems sleeping for the first little while because you're firing. And they're firing, like 20 yards that way is the gun. And a gun that big going off, like, it's not only extremely loud, but it shakes the ground. And so the first couple nights I'm like, was that IDF or was that us? Which IDF would be an indirect fire hit somewhere close to us because it felt the same when the IDF hit as it did when the guns fired and you're right next to them. It felt like you feel it. And so you lay in there on a cot and boom! And you just open your eyes and you're like, nobody's running. Go back to sleep. And eventually I got to where I slept through all of it. I could be sleeping probably like right next to the gun and sleep through it. Which was a tiny bit scary because I'm like, oh, hey, well, if we get hit, I'm going to sleep through that too. So, and one time we had small arms fire. We had people apparently like crackhead ISIS. Apparently they have drugs. Somebody found their drug den. They have a little ISIS drug den. Well, like a couple of them broke into the perimeters and they didn't even come wake us up. Like they were shooting and like captured them and got rid of them. And the people that weren't on shift that were sleeping, we just slept through all of this. So woke up the next morning and we have walls around where the tents were when we had tents. Sometimes we didn't have tents, but when that happened, we had tents and we have these walls around it. Come out of the tent to go to my shift. And the little wall that we have to walk past, there were like 6 holes in it. And I'm like, okay. Walk down to where my little FDC was set up. I'm like, hey, what happened last night? Like, why did you let us sleep? Like, what was going on? They're like, oh yeah, just a couple of like really high guys broke in. We took care of it. And so I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you took care of it. Sweet.
What were the interactions like between the males and the females while you were in Iraq?
Oh, yeah. So, there was different stories from different people. At the place that I was at with our specific group, there was no, like, assault or any of that happening, which I did hear about that happening in some of the other platoon groups. In some of the other places that was still my bigger unit. So there was some incidences, not in my platoon, thank God, but there was a lot of the guys like, hey, so you wanna like, and I'm like, no, man, not even if you weren't married. Like, there was more of like the down low, like, hey, you think we could maybe, like, what about just while we're up here because I really need to get some like attention, and like, no, man, nope, go try the medic. Like,
just everybody but me.
Pull that cord there.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you know, just no. But I mean, they weren't super pushy about it and nobody tried to like physically do anything, but there was a whole lot of suggesting, hey, let's
Oh my gosh.
which makes me feel kind of bad, like if my boyfriend's still in and if he gets deployed, I'd be like, better not. Better not. And then there's even like, I talked to some of the guys because the people in my FDC group or like my bros, like none of them try to hit me up or anything. They're like my bros. And so when they were talking, they would talk to me like I was one of them. So they would talk to me. I'm like, all y'all are some dirty MFers, like, ew. But they would talk to me about the other girls and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, ew. But there's a deployment scale apparently. The deployment scale is if you're a 4 back home, you're like a 7 on deployment because there's less of you. So they're like, man, yeah, I'd hit it. I'm like, ew, why? Like, dude, like, why? No. He's like, you gotta count in the deployment scale, man. It's a solid 7 out here. Like, no, what? But it was, like, I guess I got lucky with our group because I heard some bad stories about some other stuff. But our group, like, not real bad.
That's good.
Heard some disgusting things though, and some jokes, and just people get bored and then you get like stuck out there for so long. The way that everybody talked, and not just guys, like the way that everybody talked out there, if they would send us, like, if we just got back from deployment, they send you out to the civilian world, we'd probably get locked up.
So what was it like to drive a convoy?
Ooh, the convoy was scary. The convoy was really scary because we were in civilian cars, which apparently were up armored, but there's no way to know because I didn't see any armor on them, like bulletproof, inside them, I guess. But we just drove through Iraq, just on the regular roads with like 40 SUVs. Like, they're not going to know that it's us still because they're not military vehicles. Like, they're not going to know that it's us when we're towing military vehicles with civilian vehicles and driving through the middle of the country. That same route, you have to use the same route pretty much because they only have so many big roads that go through there. And so the same route that I had went on, like a week later, someone got hit by ran over an IED on that same route and died. So I felt very lucky because we stopped. If you have to use the bathroom, it was a 10-hour convoy. So, it's not just you stay in the car. You have to stop and get out and go down and squat on the side of the road and hope that you don't step on an IED when you get off the side of the road to squat. So, every time I had to use the bathroom, I'm like, man, am I going to blow up? Am I going to blow up? You go over there, and I'm like, I'm safe. Get back in the car, you drive for another 2 hours, you're like, why did I just drink that water? I have to pee again. Why? And the guys pee in a bottle. You can't pee in a bottle when you're a girl. Not unless I took the shiwi with me, which, by the way, they issued us a little funnel called a shiwi. But it's dangerous to use that thing because it's shaped weird and it spills. So it doesn't. It's like, why did I even use it? I'm gonna pee down my leg. I tried though, in all good spirit of peeing in the middle of the desert where there's nothing to hide you. I tried to use it, but yeah, that's not something that I used more than once.
Just no use.
No. But the guys, I felt like they were safer. They got to pee in a bottle. They could pee while we were driving down the road, and they did. Yeah.
Lucky them.
Right? And I'm like, all right, just don't come on this side of the truck. And then old Rajesh over there walking his cows got a good view. Everybody else going about their normal lives, and they stop, they see us, they stop, and they're like,
what are they doing?
Yeah. Yep, yeah.
So, how did you meet your boyfriend, Chris? And did you hit it off in the beginning?
I worked with him. He was in the unit we were attached to in Iraq. And no, I didn't even think of him like that when we were out there. I just, he was the commo guy for the other group. And that's what he was. And I just kept going and getting him to fix all of our stuff because I didn't want to do it. And he's like, no, I'm going to teach y'all how to do it, so you stop bothering me. And I don't know, we just talked, right before one of the moves. We moved around quite a bit in Iraq. And, right before one of the moves, I was trying to get away from everybody. Because you're always with everybody. 24/7, you're always with everybody. You just want to go away from people. So I'm, in the back of the hallway sitting there, listening to music. I'm like, oh, relax. Right before we were supposed to get on the bird and leave. And he comes walking through and starts talking to me and everything, exchange Facebook information and stuff. He's like, I don't know if we're going or not. We might not go where you're going. He's like, but, you can talk to me on here. And then we just started talking, when we were bored or whatever. Still, work when we were working together.
Wait, what?
What can you tell us about the mission of the unit?
Oh.
Just whenever you get to it.
What can you tell us about the mission of your unit? Whatever there is that you can say.
We were there to help wipe out ISIS. That's pretty much the gist of what our mission was. Like, get rid of the rest of ISIS. There was still a lot of Iraqi civilians getting killed. And they were partnering us up, like sending us out to basically back up the Iraqi army. So the Iraqi army was fighting against ISIS. They still are. Like, the Iraqi army they're out there fighting ISIS, but they don't have as good a stuff as we do. So we were just, if they need us to go somewhere and step in, like if the Iraqi army's doing something over here and they're starting to get like obliterated, they're like, hey, y'all send some people over here to help this part of the Iraqis because they obviously need some help. You can come over here and help them. And so that's what we did. We jumped around helping the Iraqis kill ISIS.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When did you leave the military?
I left the end of last year. Yep.
What was your reasoning? Why?
Oh, so I got injured, and the Army said that I am no good to them anymore, especially in my job. So I needed to not be in the Army anymore. Or what my PA put it was a change of... Dang, I forgot how he put it. He put it nicer than that. What you need is a change of lifestyle, I think is what he said. You need a change of lifestyle and you might heal.
Oh my gosh.
Which I still hurt, and I'm hurting right now. So a change of lifestyle. I don't know. I think I might have to have surgery. But
That's not good.
Yeah.
How were you injured?
So there's not like a specific time that I can pinpoint, but what I am going to go with is they made us run 5 times a week for great distances, and then it started aggravating my hip. Well, you don't get a break to like fix that, and we deployed, and so on deployment, when you move places, you pack everything. So everything that you have out there, you carry it. So load bearing, I was probably carrying more than I weighed. Load bearing over 100 pounds for walking distances after already aggravating something from overuse running caused a bone issue in my hip.
Makes sense. If you hadn't been injured, what rank would you have liked to get to?
I was going to commission. My whole plan was I wanted to enlist because they had literally just opened combat to females. I had a bachelor's going in. I could have commissioned. I could have went in as an officer. But I wanted to be part of that, like, history, basically. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to join, enlisted as this. Also, I got a heck of a bonus for joining that job as enlisted. And they don't do student loan repayment anymore. So that was my way of paying back my loans, was the bonus part. But I figured I get to keep my bonus if I commission after 18 months from that job, and I was going to go officer. 18 months in, there was no way I was going to be able to go officer. Because I was already having problems. Which is super disappointing because officers make bank. My brother's an officer, and I wanted to do that, but I wouldn't go back and join straight in as an officer because I think the experiences I have now are worth a whole lot more. Because, I mean, I did pay off my loans, but also, like, I got to deploy into combat, which I forgot what the percentage was. A small percent of the Army actually gets to say. So, totally worth it. And if I went officer, they probably would have kept me in artillery because they get to pick your job for you as an officer based on your scores and your what you've done before. So I probably would have still been artillery. But, I mean, I would have been a heck of a good FDO.
So, what did you do after you left the Army?
Here. After all of I had a really hard fight trying to get care for my injury.
Mm.
Like, it should not be that hard. They automatically assume, and I'm sure people fake injuries and all this stuff, but without giving you scans, they automatically assume that you're faking to try to get out. It took me months to get my MRI. Like, just to get them to okay an MRI. They wanted to chapter me out for being on profile without seeing what was wrong. It was incredibly difficult. Like, I literally had to fight tooth and nail all the way through to get my imaging, I went and saw a specialist off post, basically to prove to them that I'm actually hurt, which, I mean, I get that people fake it, but I've also seen them, med board people out that had a sprained ankle and claimed that they were in all this pain and they wouldn't even do my imaging without me telling them 18 times. So it took 8 months. I was in physical therapy for a long time, and the physical therapy was helping. They pulled me out of the aqua therapy was my favorite part, and it was actually helping build the muscle back. Like, swimming does not put any kind of tension on the joint, and it still works the muscles. And they pulled me out of it because they wanted to rotate people through because they didn't have enough, I guess, physical therapist time. And I figure I can help people. I probably, within that 8 months, I was like, okay, well, I can go be a physical therapist. And then I looked into it, and I have some more classes. I have a year's worth of classes on top of my bachelor's. But I want to go work for either the VA or the DOD once I get out of that grad school and be a physical therapist for other soldiers and veterans.
That's cool. Do you prefer civilian life over military life? Or do you like military life over civilian life?
That's a really broad question. I would prefer civilian life over the unit that I left. But every unit's different, and the military life in general is not bad. My unit was corrupt. They replaced a lot of people, so it has been resolved. But my unit, I would rather be a civilian. But if I could have, commissioned and gone somewhere else, I might have liked the military life more or the same. I know officers have it better too.
Why'd you decide to choose USC Aiken over all the other schools that there are?
Well, because I'm in this area and I wanted to go to an accredited university. So everything I know counts going into grad school. And it really just left it down to Augusta University and USC Aiken, and this school is actually ranked much higher. And their vet program is amazing. The people over there in the vet services are more helpful than anybody, even in the Army. You don't even know. I've been to those other schools and stuff. They don't have any programs in place. And I was receiving my dad's VA, and I could have been in the portion back then for dependents. There wasn't even they didn't even tell me there was a thing like that at USM, if there is, or Jones or anything. So this place has been great.
So what do you like about the veterans program the most? The people or just the process?
They got my paperwork done really fast. But they linked me up with different programs, different people, and got my override into one of my classes that I really needed because I don't need this other class that's prereq. So they helped a lot. I have a very specific, I'm not like just someone coming in, oh, I'm going to do this degree. I have a very specific thing. I need specific classes and only those to move on. And so they kind of catered specifically to me, like we even went to the school board people and talked to them and figured out a plan for how my VA benefits would work with this and how to do everything, and got it worked out in like a week or two.
That's
So
it.
it's impressive.
So you've already answered these. What do you like to do in your free time?
I don't have any free time. I really don't have any free time. I try to make free time, and in the summer and when it warms up, I'm most definitely going to make free time. Right now, I pretty much do schoolwork every single day. I technically have 5 classes, and I've not been in school since 2010, and these are all upper level science classes. And if I don't do schoolwork every day, I would be drowning. I like to ride motorcycles, though, and work on cars. When it warms up, I will be doing that. I got my bike ready. I go out and ride whenever it's pretty. Me and my boyfriend both ride. And so we got a couple rides in the last couple weeks when it was sunny and 60s.
Not rainy.
But
like
yeah. I get so upset when the weekends are all rain because that means I can do nothing. Nothing that I like to do. I don't get to do anything.
Just a whole bunch of schoolwork.
Yeah. I take the dog out sometimes. We go to the dog park. Or, not super interesting, but things with wheels. I love things with wheels.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
10 years. Oh, I'll be in my 40s in 10 years.
Or 5 years.
Believe me, it's horrible.
Hopefully in 10 years I will own a house, have a horse again, be a physical therapist, be married, have a child. Probably going to adopt, though, because I'm getting kind of old. Yeah. I'm already stable. That used to be one of my goals. Become financially stable. It was one of my goals. I was never financially stable. The Army enabled me to be financially stable. And if you're smart with your money, you can save so much money. It's not that we were getting paid a lot. Believe me, I was not getting paid a lot. I made like $25,000 a year. I was not getting paid a lot. But because you live there, like I was in the barracks, you live there, you're not spending the money. What are you spending the money on? Like, I guess the young kids getting drunk or something, blow all your money on that, or a new car or whatever. I wasn't spending it. So I am now financially stable because I finally figured out how to save money. So in the future, my next thing is to buy a house. I own my cars. I don't have notes on anything. I don't owe anything. So own a house, have a kid, get married, in probably the opposite direction of that. Yep.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrapped up?
I don't know. I don't know what I've not said.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Yes.
And thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.